The next few knockouts are going to prove exactly why size doesn't matter. First up, it's Teejay Britton versus Chris Solo Hatley. We'll kick things off with the Legacy Fighting Alliance featherweight bout between 5'6" Chris Hatley and Teejay Britton, who stands at 6 feet 4 inches tall, which technically makes him an absolute skyscraper for the rest of the 145-pound fighters. But when you're a demolition man like Chris Hatley, little do you care about a 9-inch height disadvantage. The first couple of minutes of their battle was a nice little chess match, where both men tested the waters, Britton with his reach and length advantage, and Hatley with his supersonic punches that missed by the smallest of margins. As the fight progressed, Hatley's speed ultimately overpowered Britton's size, as a wild flurry of rapid-fire punches had the skyscraper crashing to the ground and going to sleep on the follow-up. Now, while Hatley is super explosive as a fighter, Mark Hunt proved that it's not just speed that can get the job done. Back in 2013, the 5'10" Kiwi slugger battled Stefan Struve, the 7-foot-tall Dutch skyscraper, at UFC on Fuel TV 8 in an absolute slugfest that lasted nearly 3 rounds, with Hunt pushing the pace since he was the smaller guy who had to cover the distance to counter Struve's comical size and reach advantage. Round 1 was a real struggle for the Super Samoan, but halfway through round 2, Hunt finally started to connect with big shots before taking Struve to the mat and unleashing vicious ground and pound on him. Struve was visibly exhausted by the end of the second round, and he came out swinging instead of circling off, which played in Hunt's favor, and seconds before the fight's end, Hunt proved that there was always going to be one winner in a slugfest, and that was him.
The fight still goes on, and now Hurdeen steps in, and that'll do it.
Now, Mark Hunt showed his power that day, but Mighty Mo sent Choi Hong Man into another dimension. Choi Hong Man, the Korean Colossus, was a towering MMA fighter and kickboxer who stood at 7 foot 2 inches and over 350 pounds inside the cage, and secured a number of key victories due to his overpowering physique. That one short guy in particular had his number. The 6-foot heavyweight Mighty Mo was tied at 1-1 with Choi in kickboxing before they decided to settle their rivalry once and for all in an MMA cage in 2016. Mo dominated the fight from start to finish, landing one big shot after another. Before sending the Titan crashing to the mat with a hellish right hand. Now, Mo knocked out the Korean giant, but how about Igor Vovchanchyn, who was known as the Giant Killer? Vovchanchyn was an absolute tank of a dude who stood at only 5 feet 8 inches, but was unbelievably thick and stocky with massive hands that took down some of the baddest men on the planet in the 90s and early 2000s. The Ukrainian heavyweight would often demolish bigger foes, which is why he was known as the Giant Killer, and one of the giants he vanquished was the 6'8" and 300-pound American monster, Paul Varelans, who was more than 120 pounds heavier than his foe on fight night. Yet size didn't matter. For as long as the fight lasted, Vovchanchyn used his kickboxing to constantly crack Varelans, who did a lot of clinch work and attempted takedowns, but to no avail. Igor continued to blast his opponent with big shots before finishing the job off with a flurry that kicked off with a big right hand. And Vovchanchyn was known for being the Giant Killer. However, Daniel Cormier was not just a Giant Killer, he was one of the smallest yet most dominant double UFC champions ever. UFC 2 Division champion Daniel Cormier was always a small light heavyweight and heavyweight fighter, standing at only 5'11", but he never let size disadvantage get in his way as he conquered everybody bar John Jones and most notably won 2 UFC belts. Prior to entering the UFC, DC notably won the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, and in the semi-finals he faced the 6'4" Brazilian giant Antonio BigFoot Silva, who suffers from gigantism, a condition characterized by excessive growth and height significantly above average. Despite Silva's massive hands, Cormier did more damage, dropping the Brazilian early in round 1. Silva survived but continued to struggle against Cormier's speed, and DC put an end to his opponent's misery with a combo of uppercuts in the 4th minute. And while DC's matchup against BigFoot was impressive, Kunkli Tivadar looked like he was a little kid taking down Mr. Olympia. Now, if there is one man who is living proof of why size means nothing in combat, it's Big Bob Sapp, a 6'5" and 350-pound beast who lost dozens of MMA and kickboxing fights that he should have won by simply squishing his smaller foes. Legend has it that he took dives because losing was more profitable than winning, but that doesn't mean all of his fights were fishy. In 2011, Bob Sapp had a fight against Kunkli Tivadar, who was more than 100 pounds lighter than Sapp, who as usual wanted to use his weight advantage by rushing forward and dirty boxing. Kunkli was having none of it as he quickly broke free from Sapp's hold and landed a crushing kick to Sapp's head to knock him down. Even though Sapp kept trying, Kunkli knew how to handle him. Sapp got frustrated and started acting like a pro wrestler, elbowing his opponent and pushing him off the top rope, which made the crowd mad. Sapp continued to grab Kunkli until the latter hit him with a hard elbow to the face that had the angry giant curling into a ball.
Igen, 100 kilós embereket, 70-75 kilósan megvert 100-110 kilós embereket. 70.
Józsi, 100. Na nézzük a lassítást. Mi történhetett az óriással? Ott van egy könyökös, ami után kifeküdt.
Tivadar managed to take down a shredded beast, but how about Remy Bonjasky, who took down a literal sumo wrestler? Have you ever wondered how a sumo wrestler would perform in kickboxing? You're about to find out, courtesy Akebono Taro, a 500+ pound Japanese sumo wrestler who fought 14 times with a grand total of just 1 victory and 13 losses, with his most vicious loss coming at the hands of 3-time K1 Grand Prix heavyweight world champion Remy Bonjasky. The fight held intrigue because of Taro's gigantic physique, but other than his intimidating presence, Taro didn't have much to offer and was belly blocking kicks for as long as the fight lasted, with the Flying Gentleman putting the Japanese sumo wrestler out of his misery with a picture-perfect head kick. If you thought Remy and Akebono was a mismatch, wait until you see Daiju Takase's matchup against Emmanuel Yarbrough. When these two gentlemen battled in 1998, the difference between the two was a whopping 400+ pounds. Takase weighed in at about 170 pounds, whereas Yarbrough crossed the 600-pound mark with ease, which was pretty intimidating for the Japanese MMA fighter, who ran for his life in round 1 and even got himself a yellow card because of little to no activity. Fearing disqualification, Takase shot for Yarbrough's legs, but was instead trapped under the 600-pound structure of bones and beef. Yarbrough laid and prayed for a few minutes, after which he ran out of fuel. That's when Takase started striking his arms, thighs, and whatnot, and ultimately secured the victory by making his opponent tap to strikes.
Hey, oh my god! Hey. Oh my god! He tapped out! Unbelievable! Whoa, oh my 483 pounds!
Now, it's not hard to argue that Daiju and Emmanuel were a clear mismatch, but UFC champion Alex Volkanovski has been taking out bigger guys since day one. Standing at 5'6", Alexander Volkanovski is arguably one of the most decorated short guys in combat sports, with a solid rugby and Greco-Roman wrestling background and a UFC title with 5 successful title defenses to his name. He's also pound for pound one of the greatest fighters in the world, but long before he was that guy, it was just another dude trying to make it big in local circuits, and his breakthrough moment came at Australian Fighting Championship 15 in 2016 when he defended his featherweight title against Jamie Mullarkey, who was the taller fighter with longer reach, but that was about it. Volkanovski was the better fighter in every single area, and he put his superior skills on display by cracking Mullarkey early with a big right hand.
Oh, Sigmund punch caught him!
Very good hard punch there.
A couple of minutes later, Volk used the same move, but with fatal precision, and the fight was over.
Crisp left hook.
He does. Oh! Over! Volkanovski is knocked out! Jamie Mullarkey! Jason Reinhardt, you called that absolutely perfectly.
No, I did not. Hold on, I said Jamie Mullarkey had a nice crisp left hook.
You missed it. Look at the replay. There's a right hook by Alex Volkanovski. And look at this. I love the sportsmanship. No follow-up punches.
Nice.
Volkanovski today has earned legendary status, and just like Volk, and Wolfe may have the most legendary knockout in women's boxing history. Before Vonda Ward fought Ann Wolfe in 2004, she was known as one of the toughest women boxers around. She had won all of her 18 fights, with 15 of them ending in knockouts. Plus she held the WIBA and IBA heavyweight titles. Ann Wolfe was also a fierce boxer, though she was way smaller than her opponent, so when they fought for the vacant WIBA and IBA light heavyweight titles, Ward was naturally expected to win. As soon as the fight began, however, Wolfe showed her power with a strong left hook that shook Ward, who tried to use her long reach to jab, but she wasn't given time to settle after the first blow, as just a minute into the fight, Wolfe hunted Ward down with a big right hand to the chin that knocked her out cold.
Really fight her.
Oh, big right hand! One punch! That is it! Forget about the count. It is over! Let's just listen.
Wolfe's knockout may be the greatest of women's boxing history, but Badr Hari took down who could be considered as one of the greatest K1 heavyweights of all time. Dutch-Moroccan fireball Badr Hari is a big man himself, but even he found himself as the smaller guy against the 6'11" and 350 pound Semmy Schilt, otherwise known as Hightower. The Dutch giant is the most decorated K1 heavyweight fighter of all time, with 4 K1 Grand Prix titles to his name, and not many have been able to conquer him, except for the bad boy of kickboxing. The 2009 kickboxing showdown between the two legends was for the It's Showtime World Heavyweight title, and Badr came out guns blazing, rattling Schilt with a violent flurry of punches. Once Schilt recovered, Hari unleashed the second and final flurry that demolished the Hightower. Badr Hari may be one of the greats of kickboxing, but now it's time to end things off with the GOAT of the boxing world. We'll be capping this list off with the man, the myth, the legend, Iron Mike Tyson, who conquered dozens of monsters and high towers in his career, including the 6'6" Cuban Jose Ribalta, who was a foot taller than Tyson when the two battled in 1986, when Iron Mike was a young and hungry destroyer who vanquished anybody and everybody. Ribalta was no different, as he got beaten from pillar to post with one haymaker after another, and after taking a complete beating, Jose managed to survive until the 10th round before Tyson finally put him out of his misery.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's a fighter. And that's it.
So does size really matter in combat sports? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and check out another one here.